everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex, and this is Big Baby Review. So today is Wednesday, Dale Keown Day. We're looking at PITT number 17, cover dated March 1998. Interior cover, weirdly enough, April 1998. So I don't know what's going on there. But anyways, some miscommunication somewhere there. Continuing the huge kind of tonal shift of PITT from that kind of, the seeds were planted in issue 15. We reviewed issue 16 last week, and I mentioned how kind of drastic the direction of the storyline went. You know, 5 years into the future, all of a sudden Bill Clinton is involved in politics and, you know, the military, where they really weren't a huge part of the story in at least the first 14 issues of PITT, including part of issue 15 as well. So there's kind of a major difference. You might notice in the coloring as well, there's a difference, a slight difference. It's like everything's still in that same, you know, color mold, but even darker. And that kind of reflects the storyline as well. For some reason, you know, listen, all or most of 90s comics are credited as being dark and gritty, and PITT for sure is. To a certain extent, but I still feel like those first few issues and all up to about issue, you know, again, 14, it's got that 90s comics vibe, that dark edge and stuff and grittiness, but it's still fun. Last issue wasn't really fun, and I gotta say, this issue is not really fun either. Is it bad? I don't know. I don't know if I'd qualify it quite that way or characterize it that way. Maybe it has, I mean, I definitely think, my opinion is that it has a lot to do with the writer now. What it feels like to me is that Dale Keown has kind of run out of storyline ideas and handed it over to his buddy, in this case, Richard Pace, who's kind of bringing it more in line with, I guess, maybe what most comics were about around 1998. Still got that dark, gritty vibe and stuff, but he's going a bit further into the political, I guess, with, like I said, the military and Bill Clinton. And the tone overall is very much, I guess, not as fun and more serious. And I'm not quite sure it works. I do prefer definitely the tone that we had before, where we still had a fun aspect to it. Now it's really gotten very dire as kind of a storyline. But anyways, we'll crack her open, have a look inside, and I'll give you more details about what I'm talking about as we go through the issue. I mean, very cool, serviceable cover that introduces our Captain America kind of analog that we're going to learn about here. I think I mentioned last review, but this one, there's definitely kind of a Marvel bent to it as well, in the introduction of this Captain America-like character and analog. A little bit different from original Cap, obviously, but again, as we go through the comic, I'll go over those details as well. But yeah, definitely, this is the part of the run on PITT as well, where it kind of gets Marvelized a little bit, and a lot of analog to Marvel characters are introduced, I know, in the next few issues. I know there's like a Doctor Strange guy. I remember him specifically, but there's others. Anyways, when we get to that, let's start with this guy here. So, also wanted to mention, great cover. Like I said, the colors and everything. There's, once again, some sort of production issue here, right? This is kind of like what happened with Namor. If you listen to my Namor reviews, where Jay Lee was clearly drawing for full bleed, and then the pages are being reduced a bit, so you still get that old school white border around it, which is kind of odd, and a little bit off-putting. Not a huge issue, but seems like some of that happened with the formatting of this cover here. Someone didn't know how to spread it out properly to the proper printing dimensions, and you get this little border around it that really doesn't make sense, and also isn't even symmetrical. It's like wider on this side than it is here. I know I'm nitpicking a lot. I mean, the image itself is great, and from far away you probably don't notice, but you know, it is clearly a mistake. It's not a purposeful framing. There's even a slight angle at the top here, obviously from the printing press, but yeah, you want to avoid that with covers, and that's why you do full bleed for covers, right? That's what I find odd. You know, covers have always been pretty much full bleed. So why was it so hard for so long to print interior pages in full bleed as well? It's kind of odd. And I mean, his interior pages don't seem to have, they are in full bleed, as you can see with the panel going all the way to the side of the page here. There don't seem to be any kind of formatting issues there, but always on the cover with PITT. And even like if this had been blown up properly, still cutting off a bit of the logo after all of these issues. I think it's been happening since issue 1. I'm not 100% sure, but like, I just feel like you would fix that. You would, whatever original logo you got, you would bring it in a bit and get the contours and the edges and just enough negative space at the top there. But yeah, never been done. I guess at this point, maybe it's established like that. It's the full bleed look, right? That's the name of the studio. So pencils, inks, and plot, Dale Keown. Kind of odd. We'll try to keep note of this as we go through. Breakdowns 5 to 8 and 15 to 17 are by Ken Lashley, and there's a bit of difference in the art there, so I want to point it out when we get to that point. Plot, script, like I said, Richard Pace. Colors, Dale Keown. So I do think the colors work here. Pretty much in the same vein as what was going on with Pitt before, but again, a much darker tone overall. Again, fitting the storyline here. Oh, just going to point out that Dale Keown's doing Eric Larson style trees back here. So, let me read you the recap, because if you know anything about early Pitt, you're going to find this quite astonishing, I guess, to see where we're at now and the tone of it. It really gives you the tone of where we're at. After a mysterious beast wreaks havoc on a U.S. Army experimental weapons depot, the order is sent out, destroy Pitt. It wasn't Pitt, it was the Zoibod Pitt version, right? During the subsequent battle, it becomes apparent to Pitt that the man behind the plan to destroy him is none other than President Clinton. Kind of comes out of left field, doesn't it, right? Just all of a sudden in Pitt, Bill Clinton's involved, a real character from real life, a president. Meanwhile, Tim Bracken returns to the halfway house to discover Lupe Silva, what a stupid name, psycho wolf bitch from hell, waiting for him. And it's also revealed in this issue that she's British. She says so herself. So her name is Lupe Silva and she's British. It just makes no sense. So she's waiting for him. She clamps a psi-dampening collar around his neck, preventing him from psychically defending himself because he's got those psychic powers, right? So reading this and the comic, it's like a lot of this is dependent on you having read like X-Men and stuff, right? And so when you see psi or psi-dampening collar, if you haven't read comics, you're like, what the hell is that, At least they explain it quickly. So yeah, great colors throughout this page. I think it looks great. And then we get the double page splash of Pitt taking on these military dudes. The almost monochromatic kind of coloring here, even though there's like some grays and then the lighting here. Just, I don't feel these are conventional choices, but I think it looks really cool here. Obviously, expressive color rather than literal color here. Maybe still evoking, realistically the interior lighting of the ship that they're in, but also, the danger of Pitt and the violence of Pitt. I mean, at this point, isn't Pitt just basically with the red here, Hulk 2099 or vice versa? Quite a subtle drawing on this page here. Very kind of subdued, soft storytelling. I think he does a really good job of it with the lighting and the hatching. It looks great. Almost like very illustrative, more so than comic booky, I guess. I'd say it's less cartoony and more realistic overall. I don't think that's one of the Lashley pages, but let me double check. So 5 to 8 is Lashley. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is a page laid out by Lashley. That's his name, Ken Lashley. And I mean, because they're layouts, obviously Dale Keown can throw his own style on top there, but you do see some slight differences from what Dale Keown would usually do. It's pretty close here, but I do feel maybe the proportions of the head are a little bit different. It's a pretty reasonable facsimile of Dale Keown's art, I would say. Something else I wanted to mention, he's still Richard Pace, I guess, is the guy doing the repeated media figure, Dark Knight style, with just a very dark story, probably pulled from the headlines or inspired by the headlines. I feel like some of them are literal and some of them are changed a little bit and inspired. Let me just read them out because it's it's a dark period in comics. A newborn infant abandoned in a toilet at Walt Disney World has been determined to be the 9th child of a wealthy tourist from the Philippines. The girl's mother faces charges. Here's another one. Found guilty of murdering his ex-wife and was sentenced to life in prison. Police forensics experts sifted the riverbed for months to find pieces of bone and hair after the man had disposed of the victim's body with a wood chipper. It's only good news in the Pitt universe. So we said 5, 6, 7. Okay, so up to here. So yeah, there's, in this drawing here, this doesn't feel like Dale Keown, right? It just doesn't. Again, close, but the proportions and the rendering even here, even though Dale Keown probably finished on top, just is knowing Ken Lashley's art, I do see a little bit more of that. But I can see how they're probably friends and their styles are kind of akin to each other where they can work and blend it a little bit. So, again, I don't think it's surprising how little of a difference it makes as you read the comic. If I hadn't checked the credits, I may not have even actually noticed and just thought that, Dale Keown was cheaping out a little bit on some of the art. Did I miss one there? No. Okay. So more from Mrs. Positive Media Figure. A Palm Beach, Florida man has been charged with kidnapping his pregnant former girlfriend. He was attempting to imprison the woman, a diabetic, in his basement until it was too late for her to have a legal abortion. Police apprehended the man when he tried to purchase insulin at a neighborhood drugstore. It's an odd story. And so we're back to the Dale Keown pages, and here's an interesting bit because this bit of the plot with Timmy is going to resolve a little bit later. So obviously this psychotic werewolf lady is after Timmy. She wants to kill him. She put the psi dampening collar on him. He's trying to get it off. He's figuring out that it's going to run out of batteries at some point and he'll get his powers back. So she does this kind of crazy thing here where she pulls out, I guess it seems like she's cutting open her hand and pulling out a vein. And she kind of makes this weird electric string out of it and wraps it around Timmy's neck here, right? And that's going to resolve in a few pages. But here's where we learn that she's British, right? Sometimes I think I've become more of a Swiss Army knife than an expatriate British werewolf. So a lot of quick bit of exposition to let us know who she is. Again, production issues, weirdness. I don't know what's going on here. You know, sometimes I even wonder if the credits are mistaken and these are the Ken Lashley pages because the art looks different. Or it could just be Dale Keown, again, just like the cover, having some production Photoshop issues or something. But just the quality of it, the resolution, it's a little murky compared to the other pages, which are nice and clean and the inking sharp. Here we get a little bit of blur, like maybe it was blown up or something. I don't know for sure. But we get it on these two pages. It's like they were added later because somehow, you know, they needed these bits of more exposition, I guess, to a certain point to get a story point across. Because here's where they're describing basically the Captain America guy. So then you've likely heard, he's talking to the young officer, of course. Then you've likely heard of Captain Curtis America's one-man army, the fastest, strongest, and toughest soldier U.S. science could manufacture. My father met him in Korea and swore he looked as young as he did in the newsreels from the 40s. So if that's not Captain America, I don't know. Who is. He's like, I thought he was dead, but basically they've unthawed him. So back to Pitt, and he's attacked that ship, right? And these military dudes, and basically just kind of scares the crap out of this one and crunches his walkie-talkie that he's communicating with. And Pitt just does the old walking off, you know, cool guys don't look at explosions or destruction and fire. Positive media lady. A nationwide search is on for 2 teenagers suspected of killing a woman and her 2 children and dumping their bodies in a pond. Another, again, positive story. Let me count again. So the next page by Lashley was 15. So I lost count. Let me do it again. 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13. So here's another kind of slightly blurry page. And I could almost believe Ken Lashley had done underneath the underdrawing, but they say it isn't. And that he starts up again over here. This 100% is a Dale Keown page. Here's our Captain America analog meeting a character named Little Buck. They name him before that right here. Mr. Buckman, please come with me. So, you know, if that's not, again, an analog of Bucky. So this is like just retread story that we've seen of Bucky meeting, you know, Captain America when he's older. Right, this is old man Bucky meeting Captain America who just got thawed out. You know, this Captain America gets, you know, thawed out, goes on a mission that gets frozen again. That's why he can live for so long. Miss Positivity. A New York City police officer was convicted of murder yesterday for shooting a man to death in a parking dispute. Lovely. So again, over here, you know, Ken Lashley has always been a little closer maybe to the Wildstorm style overall, more so than Dale Keown. So I feel that on this page you can, you know, more kind of see that, maybe more in this shot and this panel here specifically, more of a Wildstorm kind of look, where, you know, this face, I think here is very successful in blending into the Dale Keown style, a little bit more Wildstorm look over here. So that is 15 to 17 for Lashley. So this one, they claim this one and this one. I guess I could see it and it could work. The fact also that she's naked, right? Last issue she was naked and she's naked here. Just an odd detail. Nothing against it per se, but just, again, an odd choice. Not sure who this character is. You know, like I said, very close to Dale Keown on these pages, but still, I feel like this is a bit more Lashley-ish, if I can use that as an adjective. And I've already sold the punch because you've looked at this page of basically that string wrapped around Timmy's neck. She's actually been able to cut his head off, which is quite shocking. And again, very dark to have, you know, again, this shift in tone with Pitt, with just deciding to bring it 5 years in the future and someone else is writing it. And, you know, Timmy, he was a cute kid with crazy powers and stuff, and him and Pitt were linked and whatever. You know, we're 5 years in the future. Timmy's head's just been cut off. Pitt's kind of just thundering through trying to kill Bill Clinton. Right? There's no real connection to the original storyline other than the same characters are there 5 years later in completely different situations. And I'm not against the idea that, yeah, you go 5 years in the future and things are vastly different, but this is just, I mean, yeah, there's no connection yet. We've already had like 2.5 issues. The FBI agent convicted of treason for selling sensitive information to the former Soviet Union said he felt betrayed by the Bureau and revealed that his transfer to the FBI's New York office was the main reason for his actions. See, again, that one doesn't seem so horrific in and of itself, but maybe more pulled directly from the headlines of something that was going on in 1997, 1998. Anyways, that's my theory. Wow, they really throw one in. I have to read them all now. So yeah, Captain Curtis, is that his name? Captain something. Anyways, we'll just call him Captain. Right now he's got his almost Captain America garb on. Miss Positivity shot both men after they made fun of his toupee. The men are recovering in hospital while the search for the former mayor continues. So the mayor did that. Protesters have received a restraining order to stay at least 500 yards away from the building housing a Vietnam veteran's personal museum. The controversy started when the veteran refused to remove a necklace of human ears from the display. I remember that whole idea of Vietnam vets back when they were in Vietnam, killing Vietnamese people and cutting their ears and making necklaces of human ears. The first time I ever encountered that idea was in Universal Soldier, and I was like, whoa, as a kid when that came out, I was like 11, 12. I was very impressed by that and how dark it was, right? Not necessarily even knowing while watching the movie that it was inspired from the fact that, didn't quite understand the historical military context at that point, about the Vietnam War. Not so much. I knew it was something people didn't really want to talk about. But the soldiers in Universal Soldier, if I'm not mistaken, were in Vietnam and were frozen. And then, again, kind of like in this guy here, woken up a little later in the future as these kind of perfect controlled soldiers, right? But one of them breaks free and goes back to his old Vietnam habits of making ear necklaces, right? So I didn't make the Vietnam connection right away, but eventually I figured out that this was, I don't know how commonplace it was, but obviously we've all heard those stories of Vietnam soldiers doing that. And that's as far as I'm going to comment on it. So yeah, boom, our first shot. Well, not our first, but our next shot of Pitt. Big splash page. He's got a huge gun. He's very, very image here. I don't think I've ever seen Pitt with guns before. I might be mistaken, but it seems like Pitt would not be a character to use guns. Maybe when he was back in the days where he was still serving his alien master overlords, right? He was like he was supposed to be like the perfect genetic soldier. So if I remember correctly, in one of the flashback sequences with his armor and stuff, he was probably using guns there. But yeah, first time I see this is kind of a funny shot, right, of Pitt. Yeah, so that's basically it. The character that's introduced, we don't get to see him in action, kind of reminiscent of the cover here, right? The same kind of build up. The cover could be sequentially within the sequence here, and all the action with Captain Curtis is going to happen next issue. Unfortunately, not this one. Great shot though. Again, Dale Kuhn doing his best. Looks great. Now Captain America's got big guns, and as well as his biceps, and all the hatching here. The color treatment on the smoke in the back, color holds and stuff. Looks great. Very cool. Albeit, as I said, a much darker version of Pitt, if that's even possible. But yeah, not a lot of fun in this issue. Some great visuals still, though. Oh, one last thing, yeah. So when Pitt gets shot here, they decide to call the sound effect of these, I assume, are laser guns or sonic guns, Jatch. I don't know if that's a joke or something. Like, these sound effects, yeah, Dunksh. Dunksh kind of works. I could see that, but Jatch? Really not sure about that one. Pitt's still getting some fan art in 1998. Interestingly enough, I mean, this one's not bad, but for some reason, this is the one I find most interesting. It's kind of an odd one. It kind of stands out. Not quite sure. There's a bit of like McFarlane influence and Trencher, Keith Giffen influence mixed in there, but it kind of feels like its own original style in a way. It's fun. So Timmy, someone's like highlighting the shift from young, cute Timmy to evil teenage, or at least badass John Connors, is it Connor or Connors? Anyways, from Terminator, kind of Timmy. Pretty sure I've mentioned before that I think that's where the inspiration came from for teenage Timmy. This one's pretty cool. Oh, there's a ripping art contest. Didn't know about that. Choose any character or scene from the PITT series. Make your drawing proportionate to 11 by 17 inches. Yeah, if only Dale could get that right. Ooh, I'm being a jerk. Few cool pinups from who I assume are friends of his. This one says Sharp. I don't know if it's Liam Sharp. If it is, his style is a little bit different, but I mean, it could be him and a slight shift to his style. I'm not 100% sure on that. Karen, maybe Karen Dwyer. Not sure. It's pretty cool. It's a hard angle to draw it. I think it's, you know, it's a ballsy move to draw from that angle. And of course, don't miss out. PITT in June, Full Bleed, issue 18. And we will have that for you on next week's review next Wednesday. So there you go, guys. That is the review of PITT number 17. That is it for today. If you're subscribed and you're still watching, thank you so much for still being there. I appreciate it. Hope you're still enjoying the videos. If you are not subscribed, but you are watching, please help out the channel by subscribing below. It only takes a second for you, and it really helps the channel, helps get us out there to other people who are into comics just like we are. So everyone out there, thanks again, and have an awesome day.
Like, subscribe, like, subscribe.
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KINGCOMICS.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.